It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Good Monday morning. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. He's Richard Fox, TV analyst on Gonzaga broadcast on SWX KHQ. Jim Meehan, cover the Zags for the Spokesman-Review. Hey, Foxy, I took the last 10, 12 days off. It's a pretty quiet time of the year, you know. Got some projects done at home, saw the kids. Did I miss anything?
No, buddy. Honestly, I caught a couple games last week, but other than that, no news.
That's about
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, somebody told me they had the selection show yesterday. So let's get right to it. The Zags back in the tournament 26 years in a row, would be 27 if they didn't cancel the 2020 event. And look, and I pointed it out in my article this morning, the Zags are not the easiest team to seed. They don't play as many quad ones as all those teams in the power conferences. They've got great metrics. They're number 8 in the net. They're number 9 in Ken Palm. They got 8 losses. None of them are bad losses, all close, all against high-level teams. But it kind of puts them in that a little bit of a puzzling spot for the committee. Committee throws them at 8, which matches their net. Kind of reminds me of the year the Zags were 6th in the AP poll and ended up 6th seeded.
Yeah, that
was that your year?
No, I think that was, I was a retro. I think that was Dickow's year. Is that when they lost to Wyoming?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So obviously there are a lot of factors that go into it, who you beat, where you beat them, all the different metrics, not just the net. But let me throw a few numbers at you. You've got Iowa State is 9 in the net. They're a 3 seed. Oregon is 27 in the net. They're a 5 seed. Memphis is 49 in the net. They're a 5 seed, I think, too. There's been years teams in the 30s didn't make the tournament, let alone be a 5 seed. Look, Louisville is an 8 seed. I watched Louisville. They are not an 8
I know.
seed.
I couldn't believe that.
They are very good. But all those teams on the 7, 8, 9 line are. I had them as a 7. That was my guess. It's no picnic if you're a 7. If you win your first game, you're going to play Tennessee, as it turns out, in the second round if they were in the Midwest. So, anyway,
I wonder.
Foxy, air your grievances. What do you think?
No, I don't have a grievance. I thought they'd be a 7, but I wonder, given the 14 SEC teams in the tournament. I mean, I suppose you could debate a little bit the back end of that, but I mean that was by far and away the best league in this country this year. Not even close. Not just the top end, but just overall depth. When you have 14 teams you're trying to place in a 68 tournament field, I wonder what that did to just seeding some of these other teams.
Yeah, it's happening.
Because I saw that the tournament chair was saying they really wanted to avoid, particularly that first weekend, having these teams play each other again. And so when you're trying to do that, I just wonder how that moved some of these teams. And then I agree with you. It's kind of interesting. Gonzaga, their metrics are profile as a top 4 seed, no doubt. But obviously, when you look at the wins and the missed opportunities, I think that gives the committee a lot of flexibility, right? I mean, of where they're going to put you. So, but like I always say, Jim, you're going to have to. You get into the tournament, you're playing good teams. Really, it's just the 1 and 2 seeds that might have the ability to kind of run over somebody. But we're seeing that's becoming harder and harder over the last few years. So, look, this is what this is all about. You're going to have to play a team like Georgia, a team like Houston at some point here. And as we kind of move through where we are in the arc of college basketball, you're going to have those games right away. And unless you've got a dominant team, which despite how good Duke and Auburn and the top of the SEC has been. I just don't think there is a team head and shoulders above everybody else.
No.
So everyone's going to have a tough game opening night, and it's just going to get harder from there.
Well, let's look at Gonzaga's pod, their 4-team pod in Wichita. They've got Georgia, SEC, battle tested, beat St. John's as a 2 seed. They beat Florida, who's a 1 seed and probably the hottest team going into the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat Kentucky, who's a 3 seed. They've got other wins over teams in the field. Oklahoma, well, practically everybody in the SEC is in the field. So open door policy there.
St. John's?
Yeah, they beat St. John's. And, that's a great win, especially now. I think St. John's is on a roll too. Yeah. So anyway, in Gonzaga's region, you've got number 2 seed is Tennessee, excellent team. Number 3, Kentucky. Number 4, Purdue, who eliminated Gonzaga last year, but I don't think would be near as bad a matchup this time around without a 7-4 guy walking around in the middle. And then number 5, Clemson, who I think is sneaky good and could go very deep in this region. The opener, Georgia, big kid Asa Newell. The Zags recruited him, had him on a visit. Their best player, and another 6'6" guard, Silas Damari, that puts up numbers across the board, fills the stat sheet. Be a difficult matchup. What do you make of that matchup? And if they win, it's almost certainly Houston, barring a big upset. And as you know, the Zags, I don't believe, have ever beat a number 1 seed, 0-9, if I remember right. So, what do you make of the pod?
Look, Georgia, first glance, you think to yourself, 20-12, 5-5 or the last 10 games, 8-10 in their conference. Gonzaga is certainly going to be favored in that game. But then you talked about their notable wins. Gonzaga doesn't have anything close to even one of those. This is a team that has beat a 1 seed, 2 seed, and a 3 seed, and has certainly been tested in a way that Gonzaga hasn't. I thought Gonzaga's the way they closed the year, could not have been better. 4-0 the last couple of weeks. I think 3 of those were quad 1 games, 2 of those, or at least 1 of those on the road, 1 on a neutral site against San Francisco, and obviously a great game against St. Mary's that we'll get into. But you've got to have a lot of respect for Georgia, despite, maybe they don't jump out at you from a metric perspective. Offensively, they're going to play a little bit slower pace. I think their numbers are a bit deflated just because of the league they play in. But score about 10 points less a game. Defensively, both teams give up about 70 a game. Both teams are pretty average to below average from 3. Gonzaga slightly better, maybe a percentage. And Georgia only two guys in double digits. And you mentioned both of them. Newell looks like an NBA guy now. At 6'11", 220 pounds, really aggressive rebounder, 7 a game, but over 3 of those on the offensive end. He's an active defender, steal a block a game. And over the last 5 games, he's played really well. 14 points, 7.5 rebounds, shoots it at a good clip. Not a great 3-point shooter, but 32% from 3, is good around the basket. He was, for a freshman, and in the end, playing in that SEC schedule, 29 of the 32 games he's in double digits. Just delivered as a young kid. And then Damari is playing about as well as any guard in the SEC right now. Last 5 games, 20 points per game, shooting it at 46% from 3. He's a big guard at 6'5", almost 200 pounds. That's the one thing that stands out for you. Or at least for me, when I look at Georgia, is they've got size on the perimeter with Damari, Kane, and LeFew. All are 6'5", around that 200-pound mark. Can handle it. They just don't shoot it at a high level, but certainly can get hot from 3. And then the one thing that Georgia doesn't have is they don't have great size, other than Newell, who, quite frankly, probably a good comp for him is Porter at LMU if Porter ever figured it out. If Porter was more competitive, more physical, and more consistent. So I think for folks listening to the podcast, that profile of a player, long, lean, good athlete,
Skilled.
very skilled, can play inside out, can put it on the floor. The difference is he wants to put his foot on your throat. He's just very competitive. But then you look at the bench. I mean, they play three guys on the front line: Godfrey, Cyril, and Hames. They go 6'8", 6'11", 6'9". Cyril's a freshman, 6'11", 260 pounds, big kid, almost 2 blocks per game, but a young kid. So I think Gonzaga is going to have an advantage in the interior. I'll be fascinated. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it. Who's starting up front. We know Graham will. Who'll be next to him. And I think it's going to be really important for Gonzaga. They got to keep the ball in front defensively. And I would expect to see Gonzaga play some of that zone that they've had some success with, just because I'm not sure George is going to have the ability to shoot you out of it. But certainly, look, my last comment is, to touch on what I said earlier, Georgia is going to be game. They're going to come in with a lot of confidence. They're going to be on a high. This is the first tournament appearance, I think, in 10 years for them. Got hot down the stretch, won their last 4 regular season games to really lock up this tournament bid. They're going to be physical. They're going to play fast, and they are not going to be in any way intimidated by Gonzaga's size or resume. So Gonzaga's going to have to come in and I think really we're going to have to see the same type of effort we saw against St. Mary's, which again we'll touch on. It's going to be that kind of game. You got to put your hard hat on to throw out a really bad cliche, and you're going to have to work, man. It's going to be physical, and you're going to have to play well.
No, there's no cupcakes on the first 10, 11. I mean, VCU's an 11, I think. They're really good. I think they played BYU. BYU better be ready to go. So, yeah, it's going to be a difficult game. I think it's going to be a little bit of a clash of styles. I do think the Zags have an advantage inside, even though Newell is he's projected lottery pick or right on the fringe of it. So this is a big time talent. But I think the kind of the older, mature bodies that the Zags have with the 4 bigs, I think gives them a little bit of an edge, but won't be anything easy in that game. And then Houston is next up. A little bit of St. Mary's with more athleticism, more length, more scoring ability, and just is tougher than a $2 steak. That team is just nails. If they get there, how does that matchup look to you?
It's funny, man. I was watching the Selection Sunday with my kids, and I saw Houston come up, and then I thought to myself, boy, I wouldn't want to be there on the 8 line, and there of course so goes Gonzaga. I really don't like the matchup for Gonzaga. I think Houston is kind of like, that's a good analogy. It's like St. Mary's, but on steroids. So there you go. Roberts didn't even play in the Big 12 championship, had a boot on his foot, but sounds like he's going to be ready to play. Very physical, very athletic. That's been kind of their MO the last couple of years. This is their 3rd year in a row they've been a 1 seed. The difference is this year they score the ball in a way that they just haven't. A little bit easier for them. They've got 4 guys in double digits. Cryer is a really good guard. And they've got guys who shoot. I mean, their top 3 scorers all shoot better than 42% from the 3-point line. So that's going to be. Look, I think Gonzaga is going to make that a game. To be clear, I think if we see the same Gonzaga from a physicality perspective and a toughness perspective we saw in the championship game against St. Mary's, they will make that a game. And then you need everybody. I mean, this is one of those games where you need everyone that plays to play well, and you need a couple guys to probably play outside of themselves. make
Yeah,
some,
see St. Mary's last
yeah,
weekend. Yeah,
exactly. So, but I don't like that matchup. I would have rather have played Duke. Um, just because just as good as Duke is, they got 3 lottery picks. There's just the style. Styles make fights, and I don't like this style for GU, and I have a tough time thinking. Um, I don't know. It's Houston's been knocking on the door here for a while. I mean, I think they went to the Final Four last year, if I remember correctly. But
a few years ago. Yeah,
was it
when
okay?
the Zags played for the title,
That's
Baylor
right. Thank you.
killed them in
Thank
the
you.
semi.
Yeah.
I disagree with you a little bit. I
What?
think I know it only happens every show, but uh, of the 4-1 seeds, I think Houston's the best one for Gonzaga.
Interesting.
Stylistically,
Okay.
maybe not, but
Okay.
Florida is so good.
Agreed.
Auburn is,
Agreed.
I mean, they're the number 1 seed. Um,
Agreed.
the Duke's winning tournaments without Flag. I mean, and they guard. I think they're the only team that's like top 5 in Ken Palm offense and defense. I It's not a great matchup. I just think it could have been worse. And I think same thing with the opener. Georgia is tougher than hell. Let's
Yeah.
put it bluntly. They have been through all the ups and downs and playing pretty good. But I think there was a worse matchup or two on that 9 line. So I'll take it. I'm not saying they're
Yeah.
marching through onto the Sweet 16. I'm just saying with where they're seated, I think it's doable if they're at the top of their game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think you make good points. I guess, yeah, Florida. I mean, I think they're playing.
Out of their
I
minds.
think they're the best team in the country today.
Yeah.
They've got to obviously win the tournament. Auburn obviously has been there all year. I agree with you. I would probably feel more bearish if they had either one of those guys on the one line. But at least with Duke, they want to play, right? It's free
They
flowing,
want to
up and
go out there.
down, and I think that's going to be more Gonzaga style. I just think I don't know, man. Houston is it feels more it is bordering on a fight.
Yeah.
But maybe you're right. I mean, maybe you're right. It's I'll be obviously we'll hopefully find out, but
Yeah.
either regardless of what 8 line you were on, you were going to have a real challenge, and maybe they got a couple wrinkles for Houston that can slow them down.
Well, we'll make our picks towards the end of the show. Let's go back through the WCC tournament. First up, San Francisco playing shorthanded without Marcus Williams, some type of undisclosed NCAA violation. That sounds a little daunting from the outside looking in. But Malik Thomas was terrific. Ryan Beasley, who got hurt when the Zags beat him at the Chase Center late in the regular season. He played great early, but the Zags kind of slowed him down. And I just thought that the game, like all of them with USF in the last two and a half years, it's tied or 1 point or 2 points at halftime. I think USF led this one by 2, but the Zags kind of took command in the second half. Didn't dominate, but kind of moved ahead and stayed ahead. You got EK going for 27. You got Khalif Battle going for 21. They won the glass. They won the paint. Those are all familiar storylines. And USF did not go away. That was never a comfortable situation. And the Zags played pretty well to get it to 9, I think was the final margin. What'd you make of that? What was that, 32 or 3 wins in a row over
I know.
USF, which is crazy. What'd you make of that game, Foxy?
I think it's exactly what we thought it was going to be. Gonzaga's just size was too much. I mean, you look at the free throw disparity. Gonzaga 25 of 32, USF 9 of 14. Gonzaga +6 on the glass, and you just saw EK. I thought Wang and Lingard were better.
Yeah, they were
Offensively, right? I mean, they had 19 points, 9 rebounds, shot it better. I mean, just 3 of 9 from 3, but still they made some. You look at what they had done in the regular season against Gonzaga, under 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 1 of 10 from three. So I thought they got more of a jolt from those guys offensively, but they just didn't have any answer, particularly Lingard when he's on the floor. I mean, Graham is like blood in the water. If Lingard was on the floor, he was begging for the ball and just got such deep position. I was really impressed with Graham. 27 points, 10 rebounds, another double-double. Makes his free throws 9 of 11. Just 2 turnovers, 3 assists, 1 steal. Caleb, he's been pretty good, and it feels like he's found a good rhythm.
Yeah.
We saw that. Efficient from the field, 5-11, 3 of 7 from the field, from the 3-point line, but got to the line. We've talked about that all year, 8 of 9. Ryan, solid, but just timely shots, 8 points, 8 assists, didn't turn it over, just one of them. And I thought Hickman was good despite his numbers not really popping out. I mean, it didn't shoot it well, but the 5 assists. And both San Francisco and St. Mary's, it felt like the message to him was, you've got a guard tonight.
Yeah, same thing. Same type of understated stats, and impact was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So Malik Thomas, just a bit of fabulous player for USF, had another great night. 27 points. Beasley was tremendous to begin the game, and they just choked him off. I think has a lot to do with Hickman. So, but what's interesting, Jim, after watching that game, man, I was like, it's not the effort I thought I was going to see. I really, going into the St. Mary's game, felt pretty pessimistic. It just felt like there was all year, I think we've been wanting to see more. And I don't know if either one of us has been able to clearly define what that more is. But we saw that more against St. Mary's. But certainly it was not the San Francisco one was not a win that answered any questions, if that makes sense.
No, I hear you. St. Mary's, the old bare knuckle fist fight as always with the Gales. But let's start off with the obvious. Braden Huff in the starting lineup. And I asked Mark about it after the game. And, when I saw it, I went, okay, why? And I thought, it's not the greatest rebounder. Defense is not his strong suit either. And you're playing this, Gales team that those are two massive factors. And Fuey said, we had to change up. So what we did the first 2 times didn't work. So they were going to make a change. I'm assuming he looked across and said, they're going to play that 2 big lineup. I got 2 bigs. I got 2 legit bigs, 230, 6'10". And it was very interesting to me. What he said is Braden had an advantage posting up against their starters.
Yep.
In other words, the quick start, which sunk them in Spokane a little bit. And all that came to fruition. And all my mentions on X when I posted that lineup were, what are they thinking? So I give him credit for A, making the move, and B, the move he made on the surface. You're maybe going, okay, why? But it turned out to be impressive. What do you think of the move in retrospect, and when it happened, when you saw it?
Well, it's a good reminder why we are doing what we're doing, and Mark has been doing what he's doing.
Bingo. Yeah.
We talked, I think, last week about what wrinkles, what might we see. And I think I was more understated, just saying, rotation, just tighten things up. And you had the feeling like it could be something big. And that is not the one I would have done. If I'm going to be honest, I don't think I would have thought to do that. But when they did it, it made all the sense in the world to me.
Know. Why didn't we think of that?
And even before, like not just after the game, but like as the game was starting, it was like, I can see this. Like it's the simplest solution. And what it was I think it did two things. One is Mark's absolutely right. Morauskas, is an undersized four, skilled. If you watch the first couple games, I think Michael really got under his skin. Michael plays so hard and he's kind of handsy and bumping you. And it forced Morauskas to guard around the basket, which is not his skill set. But I also think, interestingly enough, I think it forced Bennett to change his rotations in a way he didn't want to.
Yeah.
And
Dictated
Morauskas,
the terms. It did.
exactly. Like if you guys have gone big here to finish out the year, and it was really a late adjustment. I think after the Gonzaga game, you started seeing Wessel play more and more versus before he'd been really kind of just a backup, maybe 8, 12 minutes a game, whatever it might be. But Morauskas, if you look at him against Gonzaga in the regular season, he struggled. 2 games, averaged under 10 points per game, didn't shoot it well, rebounded it all right, but almost, averaged, had what, 9 fouls in those 2 games, I want to say, or 8 fouls. Against everybody else in the league, he averaged 13 points per game, shot at a much better field goal percentage, and averaged 8 rebounds a game. Gonzaga was just a bad matchup for him, and I think that was really astute change for Gonzaga to say, let's take advantage of the fact that now he has to guard inside, and he was terrible. 0 of 7 in 14 minutes, 4 fouls, 0 of 3 from the three-point line. I think it was just, and Braden, quite frankly, stepped up in a way that I don't know. Had you and I known an hour before the game that he was going to start, and we had to describe to each other how we thought he would play, I would not have described how hard he played.
Yeah.
I would not have described how physical he was. It was a different guy. He looked inspired.
Yeah.
And I know you got a comment on it, but the one thing I would tell you is, and I think I've said this before, when I'm watching bigs play, I look to see, do they initiate contact? Graham does that all the time. I mean, he borders on offensive fouls with how aggressive and how much he seeks contact. Braden's never been that guy. You're right. He gets to a spot, and then if the guy comes over, he tries to hold him off.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've seen him consistently search out a body on rebounds, defensively, and then when they tried to post him up, he was stout.
He was.
Yeah.
He was good defensively.
Yep.
He was good defensively. He guarded well. They ran so many defenses and little change ups, and I mean, you really had to watch early on. Are they in zone? Oh, now they're back in man. Or now they're playing the ball screen this way, and now they're icing the screen and doubling and getting out of Marciulionis's hands. They turn St. Mary's over. That does not happen.
Yeah.
I think that team averages less than 10 a game. They had, 18?
18.
20 points. That's over a third of GU's points off turnovers. They got beat on the glass. That happens to almost anybody who plays St. Mary's. But they had 3 times in the first half after they gave up an offensive rebound, they took the ball away. And one of them led to a run out. And another time, I think it was Battle. I can't remember who got the rebound for the Gales, but he comes down trying to get rid of it in traffic. Battle just tied him up, just grabbed it. I mean, they had a level of aggression, and I'm probably going to write about this today or tomorrow. They played, you can't play harder than they played. And they played through the ups and downs, which that to me was one of the biggest things. When the shots aren't going, you're 1 for 15 on threes. You have a 3-minute dry spell late in the game and turn it over. Hickman turns it over, runs back down the floor and strips.
That was amazing. That was such an important play.
Enormous play. They were not going to lose that game, is the sense you got watching it. They were going to play as hard as you can humanly play. They were going to answer every time. Just effort wise, it top shelf. But to turn over the Gales, what do you think defensively? The 18 turnovers, the way they did it. Caliph had 5 You
Yeah.
told me Mark gave him a little more space to work with, maybe more of a little bit of a free safety, but he's gotten better with his defensive assignments. So I think they said, okay, we'll give you another step off your guy or two, whatever. The way they guarded Marcialonis almost to me forced Saxon to be the option, but not on the block option
Right.
in the
Yeah.
mid post,
Yeah.
8, 10,
Yeah.
12
Yeah.
feet, which isn't
I
his
posted
deal.
there. Yeah.
To his credit, he did it. What'd you make of the defensive, all the defenses and what they did out there?
Well, look, Caleb he's been more active defensively. Last 5 games, 13 steals. Had the 5 um, against St. Mary's. Didn't have a turnover. And so look, I think Caleb, he's at his best when he's free, playing aggressively on both ends. You have to,
Instinctively, yeah.
yes, that's instinctive. That can burn you. He can take a tough shot. Although to his credit, I don't think he's done a lot of that this year. Um, but he can miss shots, and then I think it impacts the rest of his game. Defensively, he still gets lost and confused because Gonzaga does do a lot of different things, and they're often subtle versus dramatic changes. We're man to man now, we're 2-3 zone. It's
Yeah.
within those schemes, we're doing different things. There was one possession where Ryan had to shove him into double, and that led to a turnover.
Yeah.
Right, but Caleb was stuck. He didn't. His guy had cut through. You could tell he knew I'm supposed to stay, but why am I staying? And then you see Ryan like yell at him and then shove him. And then he goes in with his hands high and he gets the steal deflection that led to the steal. Um, yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jim, you make about the the valleys, the low points in the game didn't linger. In other words, when they struggled to score or they made mistakes, it didn't lead. They didn't compound on those things. The dry spell doesn't go from 3 minutes to 5 because now I'm discouraged or I'm pouting or whatever it is. Defensively, if we make a mistake or we give up an offensive rebound, we're not compounding that mistake. We're just on to the next play. Um, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think that's a really good way to describe what that effort was against St. Mary's. It was just all in all, man, it was just inspired. And I know it's recency bias. I am sure that if I said this in front of the staff, they could pull out 5 different games and say, we did this before. But I don't remember a game this year where I was done watching and I thought to myself, man, they played their ass off.
Yeah.
They played so hard. And
they all talked about having a chip and an edge. And that's what it was.
Yeah. And it just, it's better late than never. You wish you would have seen that earlier in the year. I suppose you wouldn't be playing. You might have a better seed, but nonetheless, you're in the tournament. I think it bodes really well here for this upcoming weekend. They've got to play really good teams, but I think this iteration, if they can bottle that up and take it with them to Wichita, they've got a really good opportunity against Georgia, and they've got, I think, better than a puncher's chance against Houston. Put it that way.
No, true. That's all true. And I think the difference is they lost to St. Mary's twice. They were ready to roll. And I guess their practices were a little different preparing for St. Mary's, that the physicality was emphasized, the glass, the holding your ground, the bumping, and they kind of they beat St. Mary's at St. Mary's game, if that makes sense. That's how St. Mary's plays. Now, can you take that against a team you haven't played against? It's the NCAA tournament. They're going to play hard. They always play hard. But when you have that edge, that's different.
Yeah, but I think that, again, what you talked about with the consistency of, or the determination to fight through the challenges and the low points in the game. You're going to have, the NCAA tournament, we've all seen bad whistles.
Yeah.
We've all seen, teams struggle to score. if they can bottle up that resiliency
Yeah,
when they go to Wichita, I think they've got a chance.
they do.
Uh, so but was it a one game thing, or is this now kind of the new identity, and now this team is poised
Yeah.
to maybe do something pretty impressive? I don't know, but it was a great game. I think you're right. I think they just took it to St. Mary's. They dictated the terms, and it started at the tip with Huff in the game.
Yeah.
And I really like that look too, because it's not just Graham all the time on the high pick and roll.
Yeah.
You can swing it to the weak side or the other side of the floor, and all of a sudden Brayton can come up and set a ball screen, or he's waiting on the low block to go one-on-one. So it was a great adjustment. I think a really a memorable win for me. I will remember this as last year's team was Kentucky. This year's team was that game.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it 2 months ago when they were looking for a third scoring option. I don't know if it was me or you, probably both. I felt Huff was their second best option. I mean, he's that good
Oh,
behind
I think it was you. Yeah.
Graham. And now Caliph has kind of stepped up. They're a little dangerous with three guys like that. And then Nemhard can play and score when he needs to. His numbers weren't big. He was like Nolan. His numbers weren't huge, but he hit a couple of mid-rangers against the Gales, and I think a couple against San Francisco when they needed it. Just like Nolan made plays when they needed it. To win those two close games, I've asked, Ryan Nemhard is tired of hearing about the close games and how they hadn't won them. But to win those two, now the final scores were 7-9. That's only because the Zags played very well down the stretch to ease away. Those were 1.2 point, one possession games deep into the half. Is something at play there? Did they kind of take their lumps and learn and maybe have this figured out a little more? That too is a big sign to me. I think if they had gone into the NCAAs with all those close losses and a bunch of blowout wins, adversity is coming this week. It's coming to every team in the tournament. How big a deal is that to execute the way they did in offense and defense in those closing minutes?
Oh, I think it's enormous. I think it's and I'm not sure it's quantifiable. I think it's just more of a confidence. There's probably some relief, and then there's also just some confidence. Like, hey, and it's the most recent game, which is helpful, right? It's not like you've lost the last three close games if you're in the tournament, and now it's kind of in your head, but you don't remember back in November and December you won 5 of those close games down the stretch. It's the most recent game you played was against a very good team in St. Mary's, and you found a way to win, and it was just a really. I mean, it's so funny because the reality is it was such an ugly basketball game. I mean, they were 1 of 31 combined from 3. But I didn't notice it until the announcers started talking about it. It was just really remarkable. I'm like watching this game riveted. I'm watching it thinking, what a great college basketball game. These teams are playing so hard. And they start talking about 3-point shooting. And then I started looking for it. I'm like, God, man, they can't make it. They can't make it anything. So look, I think it's, again, man, it's kind of I guess I didn't know it until I saw it, but it's the team I've been wanting to see all year. And just the level of physicality, the effort, the toughness, the consistency of their approach, regardless of if they're making shots or missing shots, not compounding mistakes defensively. And I think they have the right guys playing well at the right time. I think Caleb's feeling good. Last 5 games, averaging 16 points a game. He's shooting it pretty efficiently, 36% from the 3-point line. I mean, Ike has been good all year. I mean, we're going to miss him when he's gone. I mean, 19.7 rebounds last 5 games in just 25 minutes, 84% from the free throw line.
Yeah,
and he draws so many fouls. I just, Nemhard's going to give you 10 to 12 points a game and 10 assists, right? And I think he's taking good shots. The question is he 1 of 4 or is he 2 of 3? 3 of 4 from three. That's always a bit of a wild card. And I think Nolan down in Vegas, his numbers are pretty underwhelming. 6 points per game, 3 of 13 from the field, just 1 of 5 from three. Only had 1 assist against St. Mary's, but I thought his defensive effort was really good. And you forget because it's the most recent 2 games, but going in, finishing out the regular season, he'd been averaging 17 a game, shooting 48% from three,
Yeah.
and had 17 assists and 2 turnovers. I'm expecting that. I'm expecting him to be closer to that version on Thursday versus what we saw in Vegas, just because I think they're going to need him. And it's about the others, Jim. What do we get from Greg? I mean, I love Ben. And he's had a great year, other than he just hasn't been able to consistently knock down the 3-point shot. He's shooting under 28% from the 3-point line. That's almost 10% worse than what he shot going into this season, which was 36, 37%. And what's Michael give them last 5 games? I think they've tightened things up a little bit. 4 points, 4 rebounds in about 16 minutes. The 4 games before that, he was averaging 11 and 8.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, you saw it felt like he was turning a corner. And then with Innocenti and Stromer, I'm guessing Innocenti gets the nod, but you can't ignore the fact that in the last 5 games, he scored 8 points.
Yeah.
You're right. So they're not, I'll be interested to see. Can they get, when you want guys to play outside of themselves, it's usually the back, the back half of your rotation. Who does it for him? Innocenti, does he knock down a couple threes? Does Michael have an impact in limited? I mean, I just don't know.
Well, and I wrote about the 3-ball and just how it influences wins, losses, and among a ton of factors. Don't get me wrong, but in the tournament especially, and in their losses this year, they've got to hit some 3-balls. They don't have to hit 50% or 45%, but they've got to go, especially with how they play inside the Huff and EK, the kick out, if they're doubling, all those things, they have got to hit some threes. There's no way around it. To win a game where they made 1 of 15, took all those other factors we talked about to win that thing. And so we'll see what they do from the 3 line. I think Nolan's a big part of that. And Ryan, and I think Ryan hit a couple against San Francisco, if I remember right. So maybe my memory is faded here, but that's going to be a key thing. Quick, let's do our March Madness predictions, the Zags predictions, and get out of here. I think Gonzaga, as I've said all year, would not surprise me, wouldn't blink if they won twice and went on to another Sweet 16. They have that in them. Now, it takes playing at that level we saw against St. Mary's, not for 30 minutes. That won't work against Houston if they get there. It may not work against Georgia. I mean, these are going to be very tough, physical, more grinder style if those teams have their way than Gonzaga likes to play. So I'll go first. I cannot stand going chalk, Foxy. I cannot just throw all the ones in there or twos and call it good. So I'm going out on a limb. This probably isn't what I truly believe, but I'm not going chalk, Fox. I'm going Michigan in the Final Four. Those 2 bigs, I like that. I do have Florida winning it all. They're playing beyond belief right now. They are fun to watch. Those guards, those 2 bigs they're good. I've got Tennessee winning Gonzaga's region, not Houston. And I'm going with another wild card in the other. I almost went with Arizona. I'm going with Wisconsin in the other region. So I've got Florida winning it all. Michigan, Florida, Tennessee, Wisconsin. I got the Zags going 1-1. What do you say?
I got Florida 2 in the Final Four. I didn't know this was an assignment here, so I'm kind of doing it.
You don't have to.
No,
You
no,
don't
no.
have to
I
do
no,
that.
I can do this. I can do this. So I just watching Florida yesterday. I mean, they are so balanced. They're big. They guard. I mean, it's just
It's a
they're just
great team.
a very, very good team.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I've always I liked Alabama all year, but I just don't know. What you forget is how tough their schedule was down the stretch. And their big kid Nelson, I think he hurt himself in the SEC tournament. Is he coming? Is he going to be
That's
back?
Alabama you're talking?
Yeah,
Yeah, he got hurt knee. I I don't know if it's. I haven't heard if it's too bad. I think Flag's going to give it a go. If not in the first game, for sure in the second.
yeah. Well, if Alabama was right, I'd probably pick them.
Yeah.
But I'll pick Duke, not knowing that. So I've got two ones now. I
Well,
like
and then
your pick. I like your sneaky pick on
hey,
Michigan.
those ones are won for a reason. They are
Yeah.
great teams.
Um, but I'm going to go just because I want to be cool like you. I'm going to
Are you
say
going Tommy?
I'm going to go. No, I got Duke coming out of that region. I'm going to go with Iowa State for the
What?
South, and then for the Midwest, where Gonzaga is, I'm going to go. I'm going to go Tennessee as well. Actually, I'll go Houston. So look, it's so interesting though. I'm looking at this bracket. If Gonzaga played any of these four, Clemson, McNeese, Purdue, High Point, I think you and I both think they win those games.
Yeah. Kentucky. I think they would
I,
beat now because
I
Kentucky's
think,
got injury issues.
yeah, Robinson's out. I think
Yeah.
you're looking at Troy. I think UCLA, they would be looking at that like St. Mary's, like we get another chance. Utah State's good, sure.
It said
Um,
Houston in the road. That's the one.
well,
Yeah.
but that's the thing, right? I mean, sometimes these runs, it's
Yeah.
if you're playing your best at the right time, and you got to win that one game that you're not supposed to. But I think if Gonzaga beats Houston, I think they're favored regardless of who comes out of the other four. So I'm with you though. I want to stay tethered to reality here in planet Earth. I think Houston's really good. I think it's going to be a really good game. I don't see Gonzaga going to run out of the gym by anybody. So I'm going to call it. I think it's a second round. Um, uh, Tournament for Gonzaga this year that is not in any way a bad year. Certainly, I think you and I had higher expectations to start the year, but this team is weird this way, right? They could lose to Georgia, or we could be talking about their Elite Eight game in 2 weeks.
I know.
I think their floor and their ceiling is as wide as any team I can remember Mark having.
Yeah.
So that's that's a long way of me saying I have no idea. I can't wait for the games, but the best thing that happened to me, and I'm being facetious here, is the game's at what time on Thursday?
1:35, I think, or 1:30.
And what time do my children have a presentation at school that mom and dad have to go to and watch? 1:30.
Are you developing a sore throat of any kind or any?
No, I am so close. I'm
You got
so close to emailing these teachers and saying, we live in Spokane, Washington. We have to, we have to be nimble. I think 10:30 sounds like a good time to do these presentations.
Hey, tell them, send them a note, teacher's note. Okay. Hey, I have to watch the game on my phone during the presentation.
Oh my God.
It's part of my job.
I'll be that dad who's like,
it's part of my job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you believe that? When are you leaving? Leave today?
Leave tomorrow. Leave tomorrow at 5 a.m. So
direct flight?
No. So I'm expecting a ride to the airport from you, Foxy. Is that too much to ask? Or
I will. If you need it, I'll be there. I'd rather not, but I'll be there. I'll bring the puppy with me.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. We'll see what happens this week. It's the best week of the year, I think. That first week of the NCAAs. The only bummer is when you're covering somebody, you don't get to watch all the games. You don't get to see all of the Cinderellas and the buzzer beaters, but it's the best time of the year. Glad to be gone, and great time today with you, Foxy. I think that was a good show, and hope everybody out there can catch us next Monday. We appreciate all the feedback we get. It is a lot and much appreciated. Tell your friends to tune in. We'll come back next Monday. I think we'll have something to talk about. So thanks for joining us.